God's chosen ones. 9 signs that breakups were actually God's intervention. You thought it was heartbreak, but heaven called it protection. They walked away. They ghosted you. They betrayed you without warning. And for years you blamed yourself. Was I too much? Not enough? But what if it wasn't rejection? What if it was divine redirection? Because when you are chosen, your love life isn't left to chance. It's filtered by heaven, shielded, guarded, delayed, not to punish you, but to protect the mission inside you. And if your soul has ever whispered, "Why does love hurt so much?" this message is for you. You weren't denied love. You were protected from the kind that would destroy your calling. So if you are God's chosen one, this message was written in heaven, with your name on it. I used to think love was supposed to save me. That if I just tried hard enough, smiled enough, forgave enough, stayed quiet enough, someone would stay. But they didn't. One by one, they walked away. Sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly. And each time I asked God, why does love feel like a punishment? I was the one who stayed. I was the one who prayed. I was the one who remembered birthdays, forgave offenses, believed in potential, even when it broke me. And yet, I was the one left with silence. It didn't make sense. The more I gave, the more I was abandoned. And the ache of being misunderstood, of being replaced, ran deeper than I could explain. But one night, in the middle of my weeping, God whispered something that shattered me and saved me all at once. I let them leave because I love you. At first, I didn't understand. Slowly, heaven began to reveal the mystery, that for the chosen, love cannot be casual. It cannot be counterfeit. It cannot come attached to ego, manipulation, or convenience. Because chosen ones don't just love from their heart, they love from their calling, and that kind of love must be guarded. That kind of heart must be shielded, because when the wrong person gets close, they don't just delay your destiny, they can destroy it. So heaven protects you, not with a sword, but with silence, not with loud warnings, but with redirection, gut feelings, and dreams you can't forget. The ghosting, that was grace. The delay, that was divine alignment. The isolation, that was God pulling you away before you could settle for less than sacred. Because fake love has no place in the life of someone marked by God. So if your past feels like a graveyard of almosts and betrayals, if your heart still bears the bruises of what could been, if your soul is asking, why was I never chosen? This story is for you, because maybe you weren't unloved. You were just too anointed to be mishandled. And now you're about to see the 9 ways God has been protecting your heart all along. Not to withhold love, but to reserve the real kind. Part 1. The discernment alarm. God speaks before they show their true face. It never made sense on paper. They looked perfect, speak fluently in love languages, showed up with smiles, good intentions, even faith-filled words. Your head nodded, but your spirit hesitated. There was no red flag, just a strange unease, a quiet resistance in your chest, a gut feeling that said, something here doesn't sit right, and you tried to shake it. You told yourself you were being too sensitive, too guarded, too broken from the past. But now, looking back, you realize that wasn't fear. That was God. It wasn't your anxiety. It was discernment, the first defense heaven gives to its chosen ones. You see, God doesn't just protect you with visible signs. He guards you with invisible wisdom, a holy alert system buried deep inside your spirit. The kind that activates before manipulation has a chance to dress itself as charm. While others need proof, you get presence. While others wait for pain, you feel the pattern. You don't always know why, but you know. And for years you thought something was wrong with you, because people said all the right things, but you couldn't relax. You couldn't surrender. Something unseen kept your guard up and your heart confused. Now you understand. That was God's whisper. Don't trust this just because it looks right. Wait. Watch. Walk slow. Because fake love rarely arrives looking fake. It arrives in your favorite package, with smiles, attention, the perfect words. But underneath, it's hollow. And God knew that if He didn't speak early, you'd fall deep. So He stirred your spirit before your eyes could catch up. That tension in your stomach, it wasn't paranoia, it was protection. That discomfort in your chest, it wasn't brokenness, it was spiritual radar. Chosen ones are built differently. We don't operate off appearances, we operate off alignment. And when something threatens our divine path, God doesn't always stop it loudly. Sometimes He just makes it feel off. The longer you walk with Him, the more you'll realize your greatest heartbreaks were the ones you ignored the warning signs for. But your greatest escapes, both came when you listened to the unease and said, "No, I can't explain it, but I can't stay." And you walked away, not because they were evil, but because you were set apart. They weren't sent to build with you. They were sent to test your boundaries, to see if you could finally trust your inner voice, more than their outer charm. And when you did, you passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. That's the gift of discernment. It saves you from what hasn't happened yet. And no, it won't always make sense to others. They'll say you're too picky, too guarded, too spiritual. Let them talk. They didn't see what you felt. They didn't feel what God showed you in silence. Because chosen ones don't wait for betrayal to believe. We walk away when peace does. I hadn't even pushed too many coppers in the different training. What they had done had been totally unthinkable. The infinite compassion of other and a cutlery. Venture. You were too young to understand it then, too young to explain why your best friend suddenly turned cold, too young to grasp why the people who were supposed to love you kept leaving, too young to put words around the ache of being chosen last, or not at all. But your soul remembered, and your heart began collecting scars before it even knew how to build walls. You didn't ask for betrayal. You didn't deserve manipulation. And yet, somehow, it found you anyway. They used you. They lied to you. They hugged you with one arm and stabbed you with the other. And the worst part? You still loved them. You still believed the good in them. You still hoped they would change. You still gave chance after chance, thinking maybe this time they'll see my worth. But they didn't. And that crushed something inside of you. You started to wonder, am I unlovable? Am I the common denominator? But here's the truth the enemy hoped you'd never uncover. What they did wasn't your fault, but it was your training. Because chosen ones don't learn discernment in classrooms. They learn it in the battlefield of betrayal. They don't gain wisdom through theory. They gain it through wounds. Every broken promise became a spiritual lesson. Every manipulation disguised as romance became a sharpening of your emotional radar. Every friendship that vanished the moment you had a boundary became a divine filter. It didn't make you bitter. It made you bulletproof. Now you see through smiles that don't match the spirit. Now you recognize love bombing before it explodes. Now you hear lies in flattery and truth in silence. You no longer chase love that runs. You no longer beg for someone to stay. You no longer confuse intensity for intimacy. And no, it didn't happen overnight. It took years. Years of swallowing your sobs. Years of forgiving what you never received an apology for. Years of watching people get close, only to abandon you when you needed them most. But all of it, every bit of it, was molding you. Because God knew your calling would require a heart too wise to be deceived. So he allowed the lessons early, not to punish you, but to prepare you. And now, when fake love knocks at your door, you don't answer out of loneliness. You pause, you pray, you discern, because you've learned real love doesn't ask you to shrink. Real love doesn't punish your boundaries. Real love doesn't disappear when you say no. The ones who broke you weren't your forever. They were your filter. And while they thought they were getting away with dishonor, heaven was using their betrayal to make you bulletproof in spirit and soft in soul, a rare balance only the broken can carry. You're not guarded or real, you're guided. Because now you know, not all love is real, and not all real love is loud.
Part 3. The Divine Isolation. When God pulls you away before you settle, it was finally starting to feel real. The conversations were flowing. They saw you, listened to you, touched the tender places without flinching. You started imagining a future. Started thinking, God, maybe this time, maybe this one is different. Silence. They disappear. Pulled back. Suddenly confused. Suddenly busy. Suddenly unavailable. You replayed every word, every moment, trying to find the mistake. Was I too much? Did I say the wrong thing? Should I have just accepted less? But heaven was already whispering. No, I removed them. Because you were about to settle. Chosen ones don't always get broken by betrayal. Sometimes we're protected by sudden exits. And though it feels like rejection, it's often redirection. You see, fake love doesn't always look fake at first. It shows up kind, attentive, gentle. I feel like enough, especially when you've gone without. But that's the danger. You start convincing yourself that enough is enough. That maybe crumbs can keep you full. That maybe this table is yours, even if it doesn't serve your soul. But God sees what you can't. He sees the hidden motives. He hears the conversations behind closed doors. He knows the compromises your heart is making, just to be chosen. And so, he shuts it down. Not out of cruelty, but out of fierce protective love. He isolates you, not to punish you, but to preserve you. Because before fake love can plant roots too deep, he yanks it out by the root. And it hurts. You cry. You scream. You feel abandoned, even by God himself. But over time, the silence begins to speak. You remember who you are again. The version of you that didn't chase, that didn't beg, that didn't apologize for needing more than bare minimum affection. In that divine isolation, you stop shrinking your spirit to fit into temporary hearts. You stop mistaking attachment for assignment. You stop calling trauma bonding God's will, and you begin to see the truth. The silence was sacred. The exit was engineered. The loneliness was holy ground, because God was saying, you don't belong here. Not in this almost, not in this halfway, not in this counterfeit that comes close, but doesn't carry covenant. You were never meant to dine where your spirit had to starve. Never meant to chase love that runs from your worth. Never meant to water something that would never bloom beyond performance. And though it broke your heart, it saved your soul. You didn't lose love. You dodged a distraction. You escaped a slow drain. You were rescued from a table that would have taken your piece as payment. So no, you weren't abandoned. You were reclaimed, because God will not let his chosen ones marry manipulation. He will not allow his anointed to be yoked with those who dim their light. And when you finally see the isolation for what it was, a refuge, not a rejection, you will thank him, even with tears, even with trembling. You will say, "Thank you, Father, for the love you never let me settle for."
Part 4. Prophetic Dreams and Signs. When the Spirit warns before reality does. It didn't make sense at first. You dreamt of snakes, of crumbling buildings, of faces smiling with shadows behind their eyes. You'd wake up breathless, disturbed, but couldn't explain why. Then came the signs, repeating numbers on clocks, songs that echoed your private thoughts, strangers whose casual words struck you like lightning, and a strange heaviness right after that person left your presence. Coincidence? You thought so too, until it happened again, and again, and again, and suddenly your spirit whispered, "This isn't random, this is revelation." You see, when you are chosen, God doesn't just guide you with logic. He guides you with symbols. Because when your calling is holy, so is the way heaven speaks. Others can afford to rely on facts. You've been trained to trust the frequency of the Spirit. That means your dreams are not just leftovers from your mind. They are messages sent ahead of time, warning, confirming, preparing. The dream where they turned their back on you was a prophecy. The recurring numbers were divine timestamps. 111.44717. Heaven marking moments to tell you, stay alert, something is coming. And when everyone else said, you're overthinking it, you felt the truth stir in your gut, because your dreams saw the mask fall before your eyes ever did. Your spirit knew they weren't aligned before their actions caught up. That uneasiness after that call, that tightness in your chest during that date, that word from a stranger that stopped you cold, that was God bypassing your brain because your heart was too kind, bypassing your comfort because your discernment needed sharpening. When he can't get your attention through peace, he'll speak through patterns, because he knows you love deeply, you give freely, and if he doesn't warn you early, you'll pour yourself into someone who was sent to drain you. So he speaks, not through thunder, but through dream fragments and subtle nudges, through goosebumps that don't match the moment, through delayed text replies and divine delays, through that oft feeling that no one else understands, but you can't shake. And he does it for one reason, because your heart is too sacred to be sold into deception. Others may ignore signs. You interpret them. Others may call them coincidences. You call them confirmations, because the spirit inside you isn't sleep. It's awake and aligned with heaven's warnings. So the next time you wake up with a heaviness after dreaming of someone, pay attention. The next time you hear a word that pierces your soul, write it down. The next time your spirit says no, even when everything looks perfect, believe it. You are not paranoid. You are prophetic. And heaven doesn't just speak through prophecy on platforms. He speaks in your sleep, in your stillness, in the sacred silence between logic and revelation. So listen, because what your dreams reveal today could save your purpose tomorrow. Part 5. Emotional Independence. God built you to stand without crutches. For a long time you cried alone. You begged for love to stay. You chased approval like it was air. You lowered your standards just to feel less lonely. You swallowed pain so deep it almost broke you. But the seasons of silence taught you something no crowd ever could. You don't need to be needed. You don't have to be chosen to be whole. You learned to love yourself fiercely, not because you wanted to, but because God forced you to. In the quiet, he whispered, "You will carry your own heart. You will hold your own soul." And so you did. You celebrated your victories alone. You became your own cheerleader. You spoke life to your spirit when no one else would. You held your own hand through storms that lasted years. You became emotionally sovereign, not hardened, not bitter, but quietly confident. You are no longer a magnet for fake love, because you no longer emit the energy of need. Fake love feeds on desperation. It seeks out those hungry for validation, those who don't believe they deserve more. But you carry a fullness inside you now, a deep, unshakable peace. You don't beg for affection. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't settle for less than sacred, because you've chosen yourself first. You've honored your worth without apology. That choice, that's your shield. It closes the door on manipulative hands, on empty promises, on love that breaks more than it builds. You are no longer lost in the crowd, searching for someone to complete you. You are whole, because you learned how to stand on your own. You were chosen to carry what can't be taught. You never wore the title, but the fruit never lied. You didn't ask to carry people's pain. You just couldn't walk past it. You didn't train for healing. You became it. Through every wound, every quiet night, every tear you cried when no one was watching. And now your soul remembers. Feel that you weren't chosen for applause. You were chosen for presence. Not to fix everything, but to be proof that healing is still possible, even in silence. You were chosen for the sacred work no one sees, holding space, listening deeply, praying in the dark, making people feel safe enough to breathe again. You don't need a stage to carry peace. You don't need a title to carry healing. You only need agreement between your soul and what heaven already knows is true. So if something in this story stirred you, if your spirit whispered, "This is me," if your tears answered before your mind did, don't run from it. Don't explain it away. Don't call it coincidence. Call it confirmation, and say it, even if it's just a whisper. I carry healing. Let your soul say yes. Let heaven take note, because this isn't the beginning of your gift. This is the moment you finally remembered. If you carry healing, type in the comments, "I carry healing." Let your soul agree with what God has always known. Share this story with someone who silently carries the weight of others. You never know, they may need this reminder more than you realize. If this message held you, consider supporting the mission, not as an obligation, but as a small act of faith to keep sacred messages reaching those who need them most.